Obviously, you assured us in late December that the schools would definitely be reopening. Everyone got wildly excited and everyone went back to school for one day, and then they had to shut, which was one of many, many U-turns that you've had to make in this pandemic. I mean, if you go over your charge sheet, your record as leading our education system, repeatedly shamed over school meals by a footballer, exam result fiasco, the school reopening catastrophe, where you basically sent millions of kids back to school for one day to all infect each other and then go back to their homes so they could infect their elderly relatives, which may now be why we have this horrifying daily death number. We had a poll at ITV 2 weeks ago. We asked England's teachers whether you should resign. 92% of them said you should go. And it does beg the question, given this series of abject failures that you presided over in the last 10 months, why are you still Education Secretary? Why haven't you done the right thing and resigned and let somebody more competent take over and do a proper job? Because you have failed our kids.
So, Piers, we're facing more disruption to our education system than we've ever seen, even during the Second World War. We are faced with a new variant of the virus that at the start of December wasn't known about, and even in mid-December...
We knew about the new variant on the 19th of December because the Prime Minister told us it was 70% more transmissible. And yet you said a week later the schools were going to reopen, even though many experts were saying, don't be ridiculous, that is a crazy thing to do. You then insisted on reopening them for one day and said there was not going to be a U-turn, and literally after one day you shut them down. It is hard to conjure up a more incompetent decision-making process than that.
Well, the advice that we're receiving as to whether we could continue to have primary schools open, we'd already delayed the opening of secondary schools in light of the new variants. But then when the country moved into a COVID alert level 5 and more of the data was coming through, it was a national decision that was taken.
Straight question. Have you offered your resignation to the Prime Minister at any stage of this pandemic? Yes or no?
Our focus, my focus, is making sure that children get the best remote education while they're not in school.
You're the Education Secretary. I'd expect it to be. But have you offered your resignation?
Our focus is making sure that children return
have you offered your resignation?
At the earliest possible moment. And, Piers, the other thing that we're doing...
Is there a problem on the line? Can you not hear me?
You know...
Mr Williamson, you seem to be totally ignoring me. I'm just asking you a straight question. Given the level of failure in your reign as Education Secretary in this pandemic, given that 92% of teachers in England want you to go, given that you're being described by the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats as the worst Education Secretary in British history, I simply ask you, have you looked in the mirror and thought, you know what, I've done a terrible job, I'm going to say to the Prime Minister, it's time for me to step aside and let somebody more competent take over? Have you had that conversation with yourself, and have you then had it with the Prime Minister?
Piers, my one focus is making sure we deliver the very best for all children. We know what your focus is. You're the Education Secretary. The problem is your focus has not proven to be very good, has it? We're dealing with a global pandemic where we've had to make decisions at incredible pace, decisions that none of us would have wanted to take.
You've made a series of bad decisions, Education Secretary, decisions that have had huge ramifications for teachers, for students, for parents. You've been a catastrophe. Own it.
So our focus is always about bringing children back into the classroom at the earliest possible moment when the advice is that we can do so.
What would it take for you to resign?
My job is to deliver the very best for every child in this country. That's what I'm focused on. Today we're launching a Skills for Jobs programme. This is about,
like
so many
Mr.
people,
Williamson?
Yourself included, who went to
Are you skilled at your job?
College. We're very much focused on actually making sure...
Are you skilled at your job? Given you're launching a Skills for Jobs programme, are you skilled at your job?